Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Questine here with a discussion about the Warriors of Chaos and the best 4 campaigns according to your votes. And number 4, we start talking about Festus the Leech Lord, who may actually have the best Nurgle campaign in the entire game. Let me explain why that is in a very simple fashion. Nurgle currently in the game has to spend money for military recruitment. As Festus, you don't have to do so. You don't have to spend infection specifically for the sake of military recruitment, because obviously Warriors of Chaos recruitment works in a very different way than Nurgle recruitment. But here's the thing. You still get the ability of incubating captives and getting infections through that particular process. And this is the real benefit in a Festus campaign. That ability of gaining more infections, and even gaining infections by just taking over settlements, is a fairly significant advantage compared to Nurgle, because you will gain those infections. So all the new plague system that Nurgle has, which is actually pretty powerful, you have easier access to it. You don't have to make that same choice. You don't have the same dilemma that Nurgle has, or Nurgle campaign have, in the sense of having to choose between, am I going to get military recruitment and get the units and get the cycles, or rush the cycles, or am I going to get plagues? In Nurgle's campaign, you spend money for recruitment, for buildings, and you also get the plagues. And on top of that, you also have significant benefits with respect to this, because obviously Festus is pretty good at spreading the plague, because he gets more casualties post-battle, and he also reduces the infection cost required to create a plague in his own province. This is actually the most significant benefit in terms of plagues, I think, of any Nurgle campaign. You don't have the same research tree benefit that Nurgle does have, so there is a downside in that, but you do have that early game advantage. Now, enough about Nurgle versus Festus, right? Pretty clear. But here's the advantage he has as a Warriors of Chaos Lord. Nurgle, of the Warriors of Chaos, has the best infantry roster in the entire game. Like, Warriors of Chaos of Nurgle, especially the variant with grey weapons, is just flat out the best choice. And now, with the addition of Rot Knights, you actually have incredibly good cavalry. You can still argue very strongly in favor of Slaaneshi cavalry, to be certain, but now suddenly you have the best infantry, some of the best cavalry, and you have things like hell cannons on it. Like, this is not just the best Nurgle campaign. Like, you will genuinely have access to the most powerful roster. You don't have the same versatility as the Undivided Lords, but at the same time, the power is there. You do start in the Empire, so you do have limited Dark Fortresses over here, but honestly, having a lot of Dark Fortresses early on is not as significant as you might think, because it just takes time to develop them, right? So it's it is useful, undeniably so, but you just won't really have the money early on to develop more than 2 or 3. So you have 2 very close to each other, and there's some not necessarily far away, like Prague or Nuln. And you do have the ability of subjugating humans. You have the ability of subjugating beastmen. You can actually make Azrak more useful as a vassal than he is as an AI faction in general. So these are the kind of benefits Festus has. And look, I'll just say it straight up. Best Nurgle campaign in the game, really good unit roster, really good character, has a lot on offer. I do agree with the ranking. Like, surprisingly, with a lot of the rankings I've done, there have been things like I agree with, of course, like Draza for Chaos Dwarves, Gremgor for Greenskins, but like the actual ranking for Warriors of Chaos, kind of, at least the top 4, does match what I believe as well. And number 3, it is Valkia the Bloody of Khorne for the Warriors of Chaos. Out of the 2 Champions of Chaos that won on this list, Valkia came in first from the Champions of Chaos. And it really makes sense. In battle, Valkia is a steamroller. Like, she genuinely is a really good duelist. She's not Scarbrand level in terms of being able to solo entire armies. But she's really, really scary to deal with. She's extremely durable, does a lot of damage, and has an even better roster of units than Skarbrand has. Like, everyone that's watched this channel for any length of time knows that I really dislike Skarbrand's campaign. One-dimensional, lack of choices, lack of recruitment, all that. Well, Valkia has many of the same benefits Skarbrand has. Like, she has that steamroller effect that Skarbrand has, right? But she has a lot more versatility in her campaign beyond that, because Warriors of Chaos are just a better race inherently than Khorne is, or any of the demons work right now. Can certainly feel trivial in a campaign like this, because you just go, you know, you get to a point, even by default, this is with mods, but you get to a point pretty quickly in a Warriors of Chaos campaign where even with the default game, right, no mods whatsoever, you just auto-resolve battle after battle after battle. Valkia is good because she does get campaign movement range after winning a battle, and on top of that, when you really look at it, she gets campaign movement range after an enemy tries to retreat from a battle. This is very significant because there's so many times when an enemy will try and retreat, and you just kind of want to get to them, and yet you can't. So that is an enormous benefit that we do have in this campaign. And the movement range, 15% movement range, is a pretty good one. Now, you can rightly say that Skarbrand can do a lot more, a lot faster, sure, but Valkia not only can do things fast, not as fast as, say, Tarax or Skarbrand, but she also builds an empire to boot, because Valkia can gain vassals through subjugation. And you end up in this kind of campaign situation where, because of your start, you get Malekith, you get Hellebron, you get Grond even. Don't underestimate the sheer vassalization potential of Grond, because they can genuinely earn you a lot of money. So one of the things I dislike about Skarbrand is the limitation of money, which is ridiculous to me from a Khorne perspective. It's a bit of a shame, like, Khorne doesn't have, like, a unique resource that they are spending on units. Like, yes, skulls exist, but they have but they're just basically used to capture settlements. Okay. I think, like, CA could do a lot more interesting things with that, but that's good. So she's better, from my perspective, for a Khorne character, she's better than both Tarax and Skarbrand. She has a better army roster, she has easier access to it, she adds magic, yes, you can call it heresy however way you wish, but it is there. Compared to other Warriors of Chaos, she just has a really good starting position with a lot of potential, really strong vassals from the beginning, and she can paint the map. It is certainly a trivial campaign. This does apply to every campaign for Warriors of Chaos, but Valkia does certainly take that to a bit of a next level. Great campaign, great character, shitty trailer, gotta be said. Like, that trailer really, really put her in a bad light. We still meme about it to this day. I'm not sure what CA was thinking about that, with that one. Like, sometimes the trailer team really knocks it out of the park, other times they just screw up in a monumental way. They screw it up with Valkia. There's few characters in the game. Like, let me give you my perspective on battles, because I've played thousands of hours in this game alone, in Immortal Empires. There's very few characters that I fear going in battle. There's Grimgor, of course. Skarbrand, believe it or not, I don't fear Skarbrand quite as much. Because it depends on who I'm dealing with. If I'm dealing with him with melee, yeah, that's a problem. But if I'm dealing with him with any kind of good range capability, he's a pincushion. Valkia, she's a lot harder to take down. And if she gets in melee, the amount of damage she's going to do in quick succession in a duel after she targets your heroes and lords is painful. Like, there's obviously Vlad, there's Valkia, Grimgor, a couple of others. Point is, Valkia is a really scary character to go up against in a battle. She doesn't have the sheer numbers that Grimgor has, for instance, in terms of, like, number of armies on the campaign map. If you defeat her main army, that's kind of it for her, but defeating that main army is a pretty tall order compared to a lot of other things. And so yeah, she ends up in in the third position on this list, according to your votes. And number 2, it is Be'lakor, who is available for everyone to play, even if they don't own the DLC, because he is the free campaign added with Immortal Empires. And honestly, Be'lakor has a great deal of versatility in his campaign. To me personally, I do enjoy his campaign more than the number one spot on this list, though I understand why the last one is number one. But still, Be'lakor does have a really good amount of flexibility in his campaign. He starts with all the Chaos Gifts unlocked. That's one of his faction effects. He can corrupt human lords into becoming demon princes, which is decent enough. Starts with all those Gifts of Chaos, minus 25% upkeep for demonic units. On top of that, in most campaigns, you start like with 1 or 2 units. Be'lakor starts with 5 gifted units, and he has no limit on gifted units for any one of his armies. That gives him a significant benefit, because Be'lakor is supposed to be focused on demons, really. He should be undivided demon chaos, but CA probably thought, hey, we reworked Warriors of Chaos, no one likes Daniel, so let's just make Be'lakor undivided Warriors of Chaos. He has the ability of confederating all the other legendary lords of the Warriors of Chaos, something he shares with Archaon, which is a fairly significant ability. Now, in comparison to Archaon, Be'lakor is more of an early game pusher in quite a few ways. Archaon may be better in the long term, but Be'lakor is better in the early game. He does start with the Hell Cannon, as do all Undivided Lords. He does have one of each demon type. He starts in a province that's very difficult for anyone to assault, because not only is it an island with 2 factions that you can vassalize very easily, though unfortunately they did remove that that greater demon that was leading the Tzeentchians, but you do get like a dark fortress in the middle of it, and you have 2 factions on either end of the island that you can vassalize. Like, you just take your initial dark fortress and bam, you got a Norscan vassal. You take you go for the Citadel of Vlad, and then you get your second vassalization. And then you can decide what you want to do. You have a portal that can either take you from the beginning of your campaign, can either take you in the middle of the Empire in Ostermark, or it can take you all the way into the southern Chaos Waste, where there's a ton of dark fortresses waiting for you around, as well as a fight with Oxyatl, which shouldn't necessarily be that difficult. Suffice to say, Be'lakor gets shit done. He can open more of these portals on the campaign map, and because he starts with all the Gifts of Chaos unlocked, or at least 1 in each slot, that gives him a significant amount of benefits early on, because you can get more units faster if you maintain the soul supply. It is maintaining that soul supply that is going to be the tricky part in his campaign, because you don't have any kind of benefit with respect to that. But at the same time, like, it just ends up working quite very, very well in this particular campaign. And the sheer variety of terrain over here, like, you can go into Ulfwan, you can go into Nagrand, you can go into Norska, you can go into the Northern Chaos Wastes, or you can go in Bretonnia, you can go in the Empire, and very few people will be able to stand up against you. It's probably recommended that you do get at least a second Black Fortress, but you don't necessarily need to rush that. So, great choice of a campaign, great deal of variety, and a powerful lord to boot. It's kind of a shame that when you're playing an AI faction, Be'lakor just ends up being a nuisance, because in your hands, he is certainly not a nuisance. He is very damn powerful. And number 1 is Archaon the Everchosen, and like with every undivided Warriors of Chaos Lord, he does start with a Hell Cannon, though Archaon does take it a step further by being able to get a Regiment of Renown that's pretty powerful in the Swords of Chaos at level 2. This is just the start of his really, really absurd journey. The only opponent in the entire campaign that might give you some level of trouble, and only early on, is Boris Ursus, except you can subjugate him. Just use a bit of cheese, beat him to the punch of the monolith, put it under siege. You don't need to take it, because faction order is such that Boris will make his turn faster than these this Khorne faction will. So as long as you prevent him from gaining any other settlement in the Tower of Torment, and his main army isn't next to the Tower of Torment, you can subjugate him. Every vassal that you have in this particular campaign gives you 25 souls, 10 diplomatic relations with Chaos, effectively, and 10% research rate. That is substantial. Especially given the nerf to student. Like, the research rate wouldn't matter quite as much because you could always get a bunch of students, but now students are harder to acquire in a campaign. So that research rate that stacks with each of these vassals is very substantial. Like over here, I have 3 vassals. These guys are taking attrition, but not to worry. Once I take this element, I'll just gift it to them. Suffice to say, this campaign ends up being absurd. You end up being called Archaon the Beloved by the Chaos factions because so many people will like you, they'll want to be you. You have such a ridiculous level of power. While you do have limitations in terms of the Gifts of Chaos compared to, say, Be'lakor, because you don't start with one of each, you do get an extra gift of Undivided Chaos. It does take longer to unlock all the special juicy toys that Chaos does have for the various gods, because you do first need to research that to begin with. But at the same time, the power that Archaon does have, really, it's just, like, this is a campaign that you steamroll. It's a very easy start. There's literally no opponent that can stand against you. And you have Tamarkan very close by to you to the east, who is just sitting there waiting to have his defeat trait being farmed. Also, like with Be'lakor, you are one of 2 campaigns that can forcefully confederate other legendary lords of chaos. Now, you might lose out on Kolic unless you move against Tamarkan very quickly, but you can live without Kolic. But everything else, Festus, Azazel, Valkia, Sigvald, they're all ripe for the taking. Every single last one of them. So all this campaign may be the slowest start of any campaign of the Warriors of Chaos. Well, perhaps Village is a bit of a slower start. Actually, Village is certainly a bit of a slower start. While this campaign is certainly slower to get rolling, once it gets rolling, it is nigh on unstoppable to a degree that even makes the other Warriors of Chaos jealous. Because, yeah, getting all of those legendary lords, getting souls, diplomacy, and research rate is ridiculous in this particular campaign. So many other factions will love you for it, the more vassals you gain. You can't subjugate Daniel, but then who gives a damn about him? Although, to be fair, forcefully vassalizing Daniel might actually be worth it. Because you can get the Doomstack with regiments right now. No, not really. I would rather forcefully vassalize Malice Darkblade and get all the juicy money that Dark Elves can have on offer. Pity it doesn't work with the dwarves. Imagine if Warriors of Chaos could vassalize Malachi. That would be something else. I'm gonna say it right there. Like, that would be insanity. Thankfully, you can just play the diplomacy game, I suppose, if you really want to. Not necessarily Malachi, he hates your guts for obvious reasons, but Grimgor, he's not necessarily too far away, and subjugation does work on him. As there's a regular vassalization, then that's a bit of a tricky affair with Warriors of Chaos because they don't really do the whole take minor settlement and build a barracks in them. But yeah, Archaon is just really powerful. He has a lot of quest pals as well, so quite a bit of money they can gain from them. They can certainly be tricky as quest pals, but geez, you are Archaon. You're gonna prove yourself that you are strong. This campaign is just, honestly, like, in a lot of freaking ways, it is something else. That is not an exaggeration on my part. It is, simply put, absurd, broken, ridiculous, all those above. Also, you start in an area of the campaign map where there's more Chaos Trolls than in other areas. This is something Kolic certainly benefits from, but Chaos Trolls, really powerful early game unit that can be made into armored Chaos Trolls. Yeah, that's when things get nasty. Like, these are genuinely the best trolls in the game in a lot of ways. Like, their sheer level of durability is almost unparalleled. Like, stone trolls, you can argue about the greenskins, but these are much, much easier to acquire, and it only takes 3 ranks to upgrade them. That is pretty damn broken, I gotta say. I think CA's balancing decisions with respect to the Warriors of Chaos or Champions of Chaos when Immortal Empires came out and they had a lot on their plate, yeah, there were some very questionable decisions made with respect to it. That's just one of them. But still, absurd level of power, Great campaign in the long term if you're willing to play that. Beyond the obvious issues that Warriors of Chaos have, like, Archaon just gets a lot of things done. So he went from being a complete joke of a campaign to being genuinely one of the most powerful legendary lords in the entire freaking game. And that's all I had to say. Costin here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. See you next time.